I got you. Okay, I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. If we could all please stand for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this is the Lower Macungie Township Board of Commissioners Workshop for July 21st, 2023. We are going to start tonight with item number 4, review an updated hunting and trapping map for bow and arrow or crossbow on township-owned property. Mr. Tranguch.
All right, thank you, Mr. Higgins. I appreciate the move in the agenda. I appreciate that. All right, so the hunting map, the updates came out of some acquisition of property by the township, namely the Dorney track. So we're looking in that we knew we wanted to add that to the map. So with that revision, we wanted to take a look at other areas in the township, along with our park areas that we delineated further. We went into the park areas that were delineated before, and we removed some areas where there was activities like baseball fields, soccer fields, mostly Spring Ridge Crossing Park, Camp Olympic. We delineated further areas. So what we really did was just narrow it down to areas that we felt that were wooded and huntable, minus any park areas. So along with all the delineations for the 50-yard safety zone, which we take right out of Title 34 of the Game and Wildlife Code, Chapter 25, Section 2505, which is a safety zone. So the safety zones for bow and arrow and crossbow hunting are 50 yards, and our ordinance only allows bow and arrow and crossbow hunting, no discharging of firearms on township property. So
Commissioner Robert.
couple of questions. Okay, so it is supposed to be a 50-yard setback from dwellings.
50-yard, I'm sorry.
The 50 yards is a setback from dwellings? Is that
Yes, from dwellings, correct.
okay? All right, one thing I noticed was that the land that we have sold to the Turnpike Commission is being shown as huntable land.
This component in here, they have half of that. The other half's ours.
All right, we can make that adjustment before it comes in front of you.
Okay, and another parcel I was wondering about is the 20-acre residual parcel from the Wiener tract. That's 20 acres of woods that has all sorts of deer trails in it and so forth. And it seems like that would be an ideal place to allow people to go hunting.
I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about on here. On the 20 acres?
Yeah, so
that-
20
is that behind
20
Wild-
acres is actually here,
Yeah.
behind Wild Cherry.
Yeah, it's it's behind Wild Cherry or next to Wild Cherry.
No, yeah, I think
Actually,
that's
right.
on here.
Oh, that is on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions? Commissioners?
I
Yes.
missed it, but it's the Kratzer Farm. Still included.
Yes, it is. And as you can see, Bruce, if you wouldn't mind, you could zoom in, or Renee, zoom into, I would say just what we were talking about, maybe the 20-acre parcel there. Yeah. Yep, the 20-acre parcel. If you could zoom in a little bit. As you can see, the dotted line represents that 50-yard safety zone. So even though the property line is further, we only delineate, the hunting area within those safety zones.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a tree stand.
And where exactly do we publish this? I mean, I've actually gotten a lot of questions about this lately with the new acquisition. Where do we publish this, on the website?
It is on the website and it's also in the ordinance as a
Okay.
table map
Okay.
as well.
And there's no permitting or anything required for people to be able to hunt on it?
No, the only thing they have to follow is any game commission regulation.
Any other questions for Mr. Tranguch?
Seems like the hunters know.
Yeah.
when They must do their homework, they know where they can go,
Yes, they do.
Yeah, you can. You gotta use residents.
even where they can't walk.
For the
through,
area.
Everyone I ran into.
Let me pull it up.
If I could add, I did have one public comment, and that was from Mr. Siegel.
Mm.
I spoke with him at length today. He was concerned about the Ancient Oaks property, that there were kids that do go down behind the townhome development there, go play in the woods. And so I did look on the GIS, the county GIS, and he was concerned that the hunting area should not be delineated east of the Little Lehigh. But I told him that, roughly measuring it out, the 150 feet or 50 yards did go on what he'd call the north or west side of Little Lehigh. So technically, there really should be no hunting on that side of the Little Lehigh in Ancient Oaks West on Astor Circle. Excuse me. So his concern was, who would enforce that? And I let him know that definitely was Pennsylvania Game Commission. So he was concerned a future path or any recreation area in that area that we would take it into consideration. I said at that point, we would sure look at the map again, so.
Okay.
But that was the only comment that we heard from the public.
And the game warden has.
Mm-hmm.
more than you would think.
Okay. Anything further for Vince? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I could note too, we'll just have to adopt this by resolution, since it's in the ordinance, so the update, we'll work to draft that and have that a future meeting, so we're ready for hunting season.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, let's circle back to item number 2, Brian Cisak, CKS Engineering, explanation, discussion of different types of roadway maintenance processes.
So probably last budget season, Maury did ask to kind of look and review those various types of road resurfacing techniques that we use. We thought we'd have a kind of quick general overview of those type techniques. I think you'll see, interestingly enough, some costs associated with them, lifespans, things of that nature, and just kind of an overall view of what this is. This doesn't include, specific streets, things of that nature. Just thought it'd be informative to the board. We're still working with Dennis to lay out. He has the resurfacing ready for the budget for next year, but we thought it would be mindful to kind of just look at the process, and so everybody can understand what it entails.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. So as Bruce had mentioned, we looked at the township roadway maintenance system from the perspective of lifespan, conditions of the roadway, treatment costs, individual treatment costs, and then looking at the existing program and providing any recommendations for changes to the program itself. Now, first, we asked, why is this important? Quite honestly, it's one of the most visible things that any of our residents see. Out of all the things that Public Works do, there's potholes and cracked streets. Sure, you're going to hear about it. But then from there, putting together a good program really helps forecast the future needs, and we can optimize the money that we spend so that we get the most value out of the dollars that we have. This is the township road classification map. This is also in the ordinance. This shows all of the roadways within the township, including PennDOT and the expressway, as well as the expressways, the green, the arterials are purple, the local roads are, collector roads are red, local are blue, and yellow are the private roads. Now, when we take this map and we actually remove all of the PennDOT roads, as well as the expressways, you end up with this map. And you can see, obviously, all the 476 is gone. Majority of the collector roads, the purple, the arterial, the purple are gone. And then a substantial amount of the collector roads, the red, are also gone as well. I really show this map because when you go back and you look at the numbers, it really kind of shows that the township is responsible for majority the local roads, those residential neighborhoods. And you can kind of see it very visually with this map because see how dense the blue is. Out of the 130 approximately roads that the township owns, over 100 of that is residential neighborhoods. So when we're thinking about road programs, we're thinking about the roads to people's houses and not necessarily those major PennDOT projects that we all see as well. And just to point out, we have less than a half a mile of arterial, and the expressway, that's actually the two entrance ramps to Route 222. It's not actually expressway, but it's classified as that just because it's associated with the Route 222. All right, so this is a graph of roadway lifespan and how a roadway deteriorates over time, starting at 0 all the way on the left and kind of working your way across to the first through the first 20 years. Now, within 15 years, you see an approximately 40% deterioration in that roadway. And then after that, you see that sharp decline. So once roadways start to open up, the cracks start to show up, the wearing course starts to deteriorate, you get water in the roadway. And same thing with a building roof, you start to get water in, things start to rot. With roads, you get water in the sub base, you get freeze thaw cycle, and it starts breaking up that roadway faster and it accelerates. So the intent is to complete a repair method or a treatment before you start to see that accelerated deterioration, which brings you into a new life cycle for that road. Now, depending on the treatment, some of the service treatments have a shorter lifespan, while some of the milling and overlay with just more of a repair have a longer, like a 20-year lifespan. And you do that over time and you end up with a roadway that lasts for a long time. And if you can do that, you can complete the repairs before you need to do some major reconstruction, similar to a roof. If you're replacing sheathing or something like that, with a roadway, you're replacing sub base and milling out and doing large patchings. It gets extensively more expensive as time goes on. It's better to do preventative maintenance, which our Public Works Department has been doing throughout the years. So this is that same graph. It lines up each kind of treatment and where in the process and where in the road's lifespan you would do that selected treatment. So when the roads are in good conditions, you can do surface treatments like the chip seal and the microsurfacing, which is, we call that Ralliumac, and really just reseal the surface of the road and kind of keep it protected in good condition. As it deteriorates, you end up getting into the high performance chip seal with fog seal. We actually call that fog seal. When you hear anybody referencing fog seal, it's actually a chip seal with a spray fog seal over top, which is a fog seal is technically just a sealant, which we don't do, wouldn't recommend. But as you go down this list, you end up with double seals, and then the double, the cave seal, and the double chip seal. Those are all multiple surface treatments on top of each other. And then you get into the ultra thin bonded wearing course. That's what we call the Nova chip. And that is a wearing surface that goes on top of an existing roadway. It actually is a lot like wearing course, but it's a cold mix. You end up with a 12-year lifespan on that. And then you get down to mill and overlay, which is the hot asphalt milling and paving operations that you see very typically. So looking at different roadway conditions, bless you. This is an example of a road is in good shape. You may see some minor cracking, particularly down the center line of the roadway. That's where the wearing surfaces, you get a cold joint there. They don't really bond together, but a single crack is not necessarily an issue. It's when you start to see the cracks that cross the roadway that you really, and start to see the stone start to show up in the paving. That's when the road is starting to deteriorate. And as you go on, you end up with this alligator cracking, and we really want to look at maintenance or performing maintenance at this point or before. Anything after this, stuff starts to deteriorate really quickly. And as you can see, when water gets in, a lot of these are surface issues. So any of these kind of roads would require a full mill and overlay to replace the wearing surface and likely base repairs or potholes, things like that. So this is getting more expensive. And then finally, when you see roads that are rutting like this, or you see intersections where the road is starting to push up, you're looking at that's usually caused by the base actually deteriorating and the base is actually moving. So you're looking at milling the whole thing out and starting from scratch. That's when you get into like the $20 per square yard, where the prices just are, they're ridiculous. So speaking of prices and unit costs, taking the time to look at each surface treatment, provide unit price per mile, installation cost per mile of roadway, and that's that center column. So it's obvious looking at that center column that say a seal or a chip seal is $67,000 per mile, while a hot asphalt, just the overlay, is $183,000. Obviously, an overlay is substantially more expensive. So the column to the left of that is lifespan of each treatment. So a chip seal is $67,000, but it only lasts 7 to 8 years, while a wearing course lasts 17. So in order to compare these apples to apples, you just took the cost per mile and divided by the number of years. It would be how much money you'd have to spend per year per mile of roadway. And that's that column that has a big black box around it. And that really gives you an apples to apples comparison. It's certainly interesting that the treatments that we've been using, the chip seal, the Ralumac, which is the microsurfacing, those are the $8,000 per mile per year treatments, while if you divide out the hot asphalt mixture, $10,000 per mile per year. Obviously, hot asphalt's much more expensive to install up front, but when you divide it out for the lifespan, they're comparable in price. A wearing course, an actual traditional paving is going to be 20% more per year per mile than a surface treatment, or some of these other products. So looking at our 2023 maintenance contracts, so those are the contracts that actually were approved as of this year, with exception of the line striping, because that we didn't get that price back in yet. But so use the line striping from the 2022 contract. We're roughly spending $980,000 a year, or $990. When you take that cost and divide it out per year, we're covering roughly 70% of the roads over the lifespan of the treatments. I'd also like to point out that we are not specifying any hot or any wearing course, any hot mix overlays this year. And basically all of our treatments, we're spending almost the majority of this budget, $800,000 on surface treatments alone. So one of the concerns with with some of these surface treatments is that over time, as you stack layers up, and similar to my roof analogy, I guess I was using earlier, there's a limit to how many of those you can do on top of each other. A tar and chip, you can only do 2 of those before you have to do a surface treatment. Because you end up with the tar actually bleeds through the chips after a while. You have so much tar buildup that you end up with like basically black strips where the tire marks are. And then some of the Rallumac, as the older layers fail, you end up with more surface cracking through the pavement section, as well as where older layers aren't adhering anymore. You'll lose like 3 or 4 layers at once. And you start to see some of these pothole areas start to form. And so there's a limit to how many times you can do these surface treatments. So as one of our recommendations, we're looking to bring some more wearing and more hot mix into the mix here. I think that, as I kind of mentioned earlier, with the unit cost per mile per road, there's a good place for some of these surface treatments purely from a cost perspective, because 20% of $1 million a year is $200,000 every year. You multiply that, you're talking about hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars over time. So it adds up. But that being said, there is a place for wearing course, and there's a place for hot asphalt. So essentially the recommendation that we put together, one, this adds in that some of the hot asphalt overlays, still utilizes some of the existing surface treatments. And we also we're doing more roads, just so that we can make sure that we cover 100% of the roads over the lifespan of each treatment. So while the 2023 contract is doing 10 miles a year, we're looking at doing a little closer to 13 or 14. There's some added cost because of quantity, and there's some added cost because of the specific types of treatments and getting back to wearing course in some of the older developments that have had 3-4 layers of value.
Brian, what are we figuring is the overall average lifespan of a road?
So it depends on the surface treatment. So an asphalt road, hot wearing course, that lasts between 17 to 20 years. Yeah. While the Rallumac, you have to do that every 7 to 8. Nova Chip lasts 12. So in all these numbers, it accounts for the lifespan of those. And that's the thing is, if you're doing Rallumac, you're coming back and repaving everybody's development every 7 or 8 years. There's some PR involved in that as well. The tar and chip's similar, you're 7 or 8 years. The high performance is 9. So it's good. The high performance is good stuff. It's flexible. If it's just over a decent road, it'll seal the road up and keep it in a good condition for a long time. Obviously, there's the concern with chips and stuff like that in people's yards. So we have to consider costs, and you also have to consider some of the other.
Brian, when we discussed all the methods, one of the other things, to Commissioner Higgins' question, a lot of this depends on the quality of the base of the road.
Mm-hmm.
If the road itself is solid, the stone base, and then the rest of the paving, that's all in pretty good shape. You can continue to do just surface treatment, but occasionally, you do have to go in and do base repair. So that's an added cost that does have to occasionally be done. And when Ryan was doing his research to put this together, we talked quite a bit about how to better balance things out, because like he said, all of these are legitimate products and they have their place, but you can only do them so many times before you have to, like fish or cut bait. You gotta sometimes just go in and mill it out, basically put a new wearing course down. The benefit is you're getting 17 to 20 years out of that. But it does cost a little bit more. one of the concerns that came up was, where do we start? You know, if we're going to transition into, if we're going to recommend transitioning into doing more mill and overlay, one of Bruce's questions to us was, when I start, how long is it going to take me to catch up and do all of the township roads? You know, realistically, you got 120, 130 miles of township road. It's going to take a while. So it's kind of a, I think, I'm not sure we can answer that, because you can look just at the dollars, but that doesn't factor in other things. Like, say you get a catastrophic storm and it takes out a road, you know, things like that come up. One of the other accounts that we had, we would go out and look at their roads every year and rate the roads. And, you know, occasionally when we were making projections with the Public Works Director for the next year's road program, sometimes we'd have to juggle things around from the straight numbers of what the projections were. Because the way they had it set up, everything was categorized by the classification, the sizes, and then the conditions. And every year you would go out and rate the conditions and move the roads up or down accordingly. But over the course of the year, sometimes things happen, you know, where you have to juggle the roads and shift things around a little bit. So I think it's important to understand that the treatments, the surface treatments all have their place, but it might be a good idea to consider trying to work in more overlay, at a minimum overlay. Milling's necessary if the road is in really, really bad shape. I'm not really sure that the township has any of those where you'd have to absolutely do mill and overlay. I don't think we came across anything where we're saying, oh my God, you know, you got to rebuild the road. We don't have that.
In general, the roads are in decent condition.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, you know, our maintenance program has always been, to me, better than most. You know, we've been very diligent, you know, in a 7-year cycle of making sure every road gets treated and, you know, is kept up to date. I think the question where I wonder, you know, I look at a road, we have a lot of neighborhood roads that are now getting to that 20-year, 25-year lifespan that have probably been treated 2, maybe 3 times. How long have we extended that lifespan with the treatments we've done? And do we run the risk that all of a sudden at one point, there's a large number of roads that have to be replaced completely?
Well, I think that's the all the more reason to start getting into some of that now and doing a portion of overlays per year. And that way you're not, you're getting to some of the older developments now, and you're not just letting the problem hang out there until it becomes a
You don't
bigger
want to
problem.
get hit with 3 fairly large subdivisions all at once, where, like, to your point, roads are shot. You know, and so to that point, one of the other things that we're in the midst of looking at is going back to the older subdivisions and taking a look at the condition of their storm sewer. Because something else that Bruce has us working on in coordination with the township staff is getting basically a spreadsheet of
Inventory.
all the township pipe systems. See, are they in good shape? Do they need to be replaced? Could they possibly be lined? Because what we would certainly, the whole point of this exercise was to try to make sure that we're helping the township spend their money the best they can, and recommend adjustments accordingly. So it's too easy to say, oh, well, you know what? You got a subdivision that's 20 years old. Automatically, you should go in and mill and overlay that.
Right.
It's not that simple. Because one of the points Bruce made the other day, and he's spot on, is, yeah, but I'm not going to go do that next year. If we already know that you got a couple thousand feet of storm pipe
Yeah,
that's
got to be replaced.
CMP that's got to be replaced. So we'd have to do that first. Now, the other part of that is the money's got to come from somewhere. So one of the things that we've discussed a little bit with Bruce, and thankfully this is his issue to wrestle with, not mine per se, is how much money is available with liquid fuels, how much comes out of general fund, capital fund, whatever. And again, try to find that balance, because an overlay is 100% liquid fuels qualified, as are some pipe projects, but it gets a little different. Sometimes you get in the weeds of it. So what we're really trying to do is how many older subdivisions do you have where it might be better to try to start chipping away
Yeah.
at getting this done?
And then I guess the other question I have is how are we assessing the roads right now yearly? Like, are we going out and physically, like physical observation?
So
Do we take core samples? Do we do anything like that just to check on roadway integrity?
That,
that would-
what we, yeah,
I was gonna say that honestly, the Public Works Department has been handling that completely up until we were asked to start to just see what recommendations. So maybe Dennis can answer how the previous maintenance programs, how are we evaluating? I mean, my understanding that you guys you go out every year, obviously, you know the roads better than most people.
Mhm. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Well, and codes changed too, which, that's the other part of it and what the specs were. Like, I always laughed at, my house is 19 years old. It didn't get a Tyvek wrap because it wasn't in the code, but 6 months later, every house got one. The outside of my house is basically cardboard stapled to, 2x4s. My neighbor, yeah, my neighbor across the street wanted an egress window and it wasn't in the code and they fought them on putting it in. And now you can't put anything in the basement without any. So, things improve and
Mhm.
you wonder what the quality is now versus what it was 30 years ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Like, that development took forever to put roads in, never mind fixing them. I feel like that place had no finished roads for like 3 years after they opened, before we got them dedicated. But yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, it looks good.
All right, so a couple points. One, just to hit Brian's point about the corrugated metal pipe. We do have a grant application in for that. We are waiting to hear back from that, from the DCED. They told me months ago that they expected something by the end of July. So kind of holding our breath to see if that one comes through and we can kind of get to a lot of those corrugated metal pipes that are deteriorating throughout the township, that being almost a separate issue entirely. But like Ryan had mentioned, Bruce had discussed that that's going to get in the way of, you don't want to overlay a road if we're going to be replacing pipe in there in the next few years. So
And we've been,
something-
and we've been able to identify about 33,000 feet of metal pipe at this point.
that's at
Public,
the end of its.
yeah, Public Works has been helping us out when they can to get some televising of that. We've seen about 5,500 feet of it. So far in the engineering review, about 4,000 of that is shot at this point. So needs lined and or replaced. So what we're seeing in our first segments of that is definitely of concern as we look at how we're going to resurface and be mindful of where that is. We definitely, as everyone said, we don't want to go mill and pave and then dig up streets because we can't line pipes. So what we're trying to do as well, see if we can get some additional video time from our guys. But I've asked the Bryans to kind of look at, is there a co-stars vendor, or do we have the ability to put out to bid that videoing and trying to get that footage back quicker. It's taken us this long to get that 5,000 feet. I want to go try to blitz it out so we know what we're working with. So they're working to get that component, like I said, probably out to bid at this point, to kind of move that forward.
That vendor today, they are co-stars. So there's a possibility of going direct.
So we do have money in the stormwater budget. We have 100,000. I know Dennis is working on fencing and a couple restorations. So we have money budgeted for these type of things. It's just a matter of how long will it take them to engage and get done. And I think that'll give us a clear picture of, if we're already 80% on our survey. I look, the linear feet we've taken, 80% of it already needs addressed. That doesn't bode well for the other, 33,000 feet that we have there. And as we always talk about, making sure we address that before the pipe gets to a point where we can't run a liner through it, where there's no bottom, where there's things where we have to dig and replace now. And we're looking at a costly endeavor, as we saw with Mallfair, to run pipe down the center of a street. So we're trying to really look at that component. And, I think something for the board to kind of look at and digest, when you see that number in Brian's spreadsheet, that $1.294 million, just to be mindful, we receive a little over 900,000 a year in liquid fuels dollars. We take 150,000 of that for salt and those type of conditions. So that drops that down right away. We do fund about 350,000 this year in the fog seal out of the capital budget. So that number that he did, that Brian showed, we have to be mindful that that's the other component of the budget. And do we have the approach of, do we spend the full 900 every year, 950,000 still isn't going to get us to our goal of 13.9 miles a year, and start to fund our equipment and vehicles and those type of things back out of the capital budget, or reduce some fog sealing where we need it, because that isn't a liquid fuels eligible situation. So we just want to be mindful with the cash, but we are $300,000 short from reaching that goal. So we kind of have to reallocate those dollars or see what we can do to get closer to that number to keep us at a higher rate of replacement. So, and we struggle with that, finding those additional dollars in there. But I think this gives a good picture of really where we need to be and how we can fully fund the project on where this is. We've been fortunate. Dennis has been able to piece together things with the budget parameters that I give him to still get done what needs to get done. So I just want to be mindful of that as we always move forward.
All right, well, to round this all out, one of the other things that Dennis had mentioned is, and that we're working on, is roadway inventory, is actually looking at all the roads, classifying the roads as far as the condition that they're in. We've added, we currently have an inventory going. We've added in the pavement history, the history of repairs that Public Works had provided. They, out of their asset management program. So we have previous repairs, and when the previous repairs were done, we've classified the roads as, or we've had the roads classified as either local or collector, so that we can kind of identify how much traffic, truck traffic they get, what their average lifespans are, and then identify which roads need to be inspected on a regular basis. Well, and so that we can provide classifications and really, this is more big picture, this budget, but we need to get into the minutia of prioritizing roads, which roads need to be done and when, and which surface streets. So certainly working with Public Works to define that budget. And then, so just looking at the recommendations, some of our recommendations, one, some of the surface treatments, we can extend the lifespan of those. They don't have, a lot of the roads currently are getting resurfaced every 7-8 years. Some of those can get stretched out to 7, 8, or 9. So adding a couple more years, that should actually help save us a little bit of money. The crack sealing needs the quantity of crack sealing needs to be refined a little bit. That was a concern with this current budget. As Bruce had mentioned, reducing the non-eligible liquid fuels item, which is that the fog seal, we're calling it. You know, it's a high performance chip seal, so that some of that can come out of, so the roadway can come out of, can get funded out of, more of the roadway can be funded out of the liquid fuels budget. And then looking at the roads that have been service treatments have been applied too many times, and they're going to have to get basically milled and over. Just as another reference, to do 100% of the roads, if you took that unit price for the cheapest surface treatment, you did all the roads with Ralumac every 7 years, your budget would be 1.1 million. If you did all the roads as all mill and overlay across the board, you just multiply the cost per year for mill and overlay times the number of roads, you'd be at 1.45. So just as a reference, and we're obviously somewhere in the middle of those two, combining treatments. So again, we're working with Public Works. We're preparing prioritizing a road program, prioritizing roadways. We're working with Dennis to refine the scope for 2024. Also want to mention that in 2024, we're expecting to overlay a big portion of Sauerkraut, the new section of Sauerkraut. So a portion of that fund's going to come out of the road program, as well as overlaying Malfair, which we mentioned because of the pipe patching that was done. So that's roughly a third of the current $900,000 budget that we have. So we're going to have to look at the recommendations that Dennis provided and look at prioritizing that list as well. Appreciate your time. Any other questions?
Super. Thanks, Brian. Questions for either the Bryans or Bruce or Dennis?
Well, I've got one request, and that is, could somebody mail us all the sheet with the numbers on it?
Oh, the Excel chart in the presentation?
Yeah. Well, what we're seeing up there, because it was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Now, what we are aiming for is to be able to hand over to the township this entire roadway maintenance spreadsheet. We've been building it almost since we got here. And we want to obviously make sure it's as complete as possible. So that's kind of where we're at, where the intention is we provide something that's useful for the township as well as for us, but to have something that's complete so that you can start saying, okay, well, here's what we need to do, and start juggling things around. So this is not just a PowerPoint thing. There's Brian spent
There's-
quite a bit of time to
Yeah.
research the products. You know, and we rely heavily on our construction management guys as well. So you know, we will have between different maps, certainly all the video for the storm piping. You know, we're following up on that. There's quite a bit that's gone into it. You will have something tangible when all's said and done.
Well, and I will say, you know, we've been asking for this for quite some time now. It was very comprehensive. It's very concise and thorough and thought out. So that's great. And as we move forward and we have, you know, tangible documents that we can look at and understand it better, I think it gets even better.
Right.
But, you know, this is something that's a long time coming, you know, especially as the town continues to grow and we continue to get more roads here and the ones we have get older. Other questions or comments from the board?
Thank you.
Brian, thank you for
Thank
all that work.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, moving on. Item number 3, review long-term agreement with Turnpike Commission for access under bridge in Camp Olympic.
Thank you. We provided the copy of the license agreement, as the Turnpike Authority calls it. This has been several previous discussions on the area that includes under the Turnpike Bridge in Camp Olympic. You may or may not be aware, residents at home, half of that park is cut by or intersected by the Turnpike. To the west, I would say, that piece of ground is basically landlocked by the Turnpike as well as the stream to that side, which we can't get across. So the township needs access underneath that Turnpike Bridge so that we can get to the other side, do maintenance, allow people to enjoy the park. We worked with the solicitor's office as well as Turnpike Legal. This was the agreement that came out of that. We did have several concerns from the solicitor's office. However, the Turnpike Authority had no leniency on those concerns and held with this agreement. We were waiting for the exhibit that you see before you, Exhibit A from the authority. We recently got that from Harrisburg. We appreciate all their work to facilitate this and allow the township to use this area for access. So wanted to make sure the board felt okay with the agreement. I don't know that we can get many changes off of it, as we've tried and weren't successful. But we also want to take some pictures of the current condition because several of the items note in here, you know, township will restore any areas that we damage. We want to show that there's, you know, no grass under the bridge, that there's things of that nature. We're not responsible for the bridge or the structure or substructure, just the overall condition, like I said, of the ground per se. So unless there's any additions or changes you'd like to see, I would like to bring that before you in the next August meeting.
Any questions or comments from the board? Then I would say, by all means, bring it to us for approval. Item number 5, 2023 roadway pavement marking program, no bids received.
I'll take that one as well. We did put out the annual roadway line painting and pavement marking contract. Unfortunately, we saw no bidders. However, we are working, and Mr. Kopp is working through the consortium. They put out a bid each year as well. They may be able to accommodate us to do the line painting. They also have pavement markings included in that component. We've always been a little bit hesitant because we want to make sure that that contract's liquid fuels compliant. The engineer's office is reviewing through that to make sure that it is. But looks like we'll be able to jump onto that component. We won't see some of the things and the concerns that the board had with you know, some of the side lining in the hash marks. There's an official engineering name that's slipping my mind right now. But in the gore marks for part of the roadway, we may not be able to get those done. Just wanted to make the board aware that other line painting contract probably isn't going to include those sections. So that's why, but that's the update on the contract. If we're not able to get that contract and it's not Liquid Fuels approved, we're going to have to go and put something out the bid. We're not sure what the response is going to be. So hopefully by the end of this week or early next week, we'll have that evaluation and we'll be either up again or we'll let you guys know that everything's moving forward.
Yeah, there were 15 different companies that looked at the bid. We don't really understand why we got literally zero. So I don't think it was a matter of, it might have been kind of a low quantity maybe considering how busy all the contractors are, but
Yeah.
you know, we kind of along the lines of the road program in general, we try to work within the budgets, you know, that Bruce has set up. So, you know, just kind of weird. So hopefully we can piggyback with the consortium on the line striping and the pavement markings. But if that doesn't work, we'll have to literally rebid.
Yeah, the one thing I do want to bring up as part of the road resurfacing and line marking is, you know, over time, we have several crosswalks that were created as more decorative or artisanal. You know, they're red and they aren't red brick, but they're paved and stamped. And that one of the big concerns I've always had with those is we let them go very ugly way too often. So I'm thinking about Sauerkraut and Mill Creek. Where's the other one I saw? They deteriorate very quickly and it's a bad look. You know, I'd rather have none of them than have them looking the way they look. So it's something we need to be aware of.
And we have looked at those as part of our program. Some of them are like a stamping, some of them are kind of an overlay.
Right.
So we're trying to diagnose those to get those cleaned up. I
And-
feel the same way.
And some of them have been covered up by the road surfacing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, you look the bleed over of the road servicing and covers parts. So I think it's a great thing to have, but if we can't maintain them, then why have it?
It's not the look we want.
Right.
We can't have it look like the pavers.
Okay. Item number 6, review requests for additional streetlights on Lincoln Drive.
Thank you. We had 5 residents who wrote into us requesting additional streetlights on Lincoln Drive in the hills at Lockridge. After review of the original layout, I did realize that there are 1 or 2 streetlights less than the other roads in hills at Lockridge. PP&L said that it is possible to install 2 additional streetlights, one highlighted here in yellow, the other one highlighted here in yellow. It would be up to the board if you wanted to add 1 or both of those lights. Currently, everyone now is being charged a street light tax. They get charged if they are located within 250 feet of a structure. We would not receive any additional street light tax, and the cost, if I figured it out correctly, it would be $21 a month per pole. We also received a complaint, I'm gonna say probably like 2 years ago, for another street light in Hills at Lockridge. So I'm in the midst of researching that to see if, before we move forward with a work order with PP&L, to see if we would want to add another street light. And then what we'll do is we'll bring everything back with a work order and the board can determine then if they want to go forward or not.
Yeah, it does seem odd that there's only really 3. Well,
Yeah.
2 on that block.
It's actually on the corner and then these 2, where the others have at least 3 in the center.
Mhm.
And this one's cut off, but there's 3 in the center of Klaus Drive. as well.
And the guts for those are already there? Like are they,
It's already there.
yeah. they just never installed.
So actually this one here, this little symbol here means that there's like one of those junction
Mhm.
boxes. And then this one here, there's a, do they call them or there's something, I'm sorry, I'm not tech savvy on what they call it, but they would be able to install one there and the installation would be at no cost to the township.
Any questions or concerns?
So, right now, the residents there are already paying the streetlight tax, so they wouldn't be paying in addition.
So what would they be paying?
So they already pay the 77 cents per linear foot,
Okay.
because they're located within 250 feet of the streetlight that's already there. So they would just be getting added light and they wouldn't be
They wouldn't
taxed
pay
more.
anymore.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because they get assessed per linear foot. It goes
Right.
by your front footage.
And what would the cost be for providing the two lights?
It's 21, roughly right now, $21 per month
To
per
P-
lamp.
To PP&L?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, as soon as we research that other one, we'll bring it back and if the board can
Mhm.
decide then if they want to move forward or not.
Any other questions or comments?
One comment, they, buddy, 250.
That is correct.
These your lights for now? This one
The,
here?
where you see the numbers, correct. So that number 53, number 54, number 55, that's all located on Lincoln Drive.
Like one.
Moving forward, item number 7, update on amending official map. Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir. So just for everybody's information, we've been working now for several weeks to finalize a draft official map for you all to review. As commissioners may be aware, we undertook this process several years ago. We are looking to update to show and reflect the properties that we have since acquired, but also consider new properties for agricultural open space preservation as well. I should note, we've also begun mapping out the timeline in which adoption could occur. The map does need to be adopted by ordinance. We do need to send it to the Regional Planning Commission for a 45-day review. So timing is going to be managed efficiently, but we do need to manage it. And then as far as the details for the map, I have consulted with the solicitor, and at least for this first draft round, while we talk to you about considerations, since it has to do with acquisition of property, we can continue the discussion during the executive session.
Okay, questions, comments for the planner? Okay, number 8, manager updates.
Okay.
You have a question? Sorry.
Can we have a copy of the draft map to look at?
Commissioner.
Got it right there for you.
Okay.
Item number 8, manager updates, Sauerkraut Lane Extension.
Thank you. I just have a couple updates this evening. Just on sauerkraut, we're still looking to complete the punch list for the area from Spring Creek to Quarry Road. We're going to see if we can get that open at some point, preferably by the end of summer or early fall. We're still working through some items on that punch list. And then the other side of the road, we're still waiting for the developer to obtain sign offs from the mortgages for the area of 100 and the existing sauerkraut. As soon as those are obtained, we'll be able to, they'll be able to complete the PennDOT permitting. That may take a component of time. And as we told the board last time, about 14 months to perform that construction. So not really much of an update, but just want to let you know we're still working on our end to move things forward. So continue to meet once every 2 weeks with all the parties. Not much of an update, but we'll keep pushing for that side of it. Unless there's any questions on it. If you haven't been down through there, you can check it out. It's just not drivable at this point. The next thing I have on my list, just looking to see if there's any concerns from the board for us moving forward. So in the 2024 budget, the Public Works Department is going to recommend the purchase of a leaf vac truck. So if you could do the next shot there, Renee. The leaf vac truck, we've found from our peers and neighboring communities that they're finding it a fairly efficient means of having one driver use the truck and hit various neighborhoods. You may or may not be aware. What we currently do is outfit a truck with a leaf box. It tows a leaf vac, and two gentlemen work behind that in another truck to pick up the leaves. So what we've been looking at in part of our recycling grants that come from the DEP, this would be an eligible vehicle for that type of grant program. The overall cost is about $370,000. This includes, of course, the cabin chassis, and then several attachments, including a wood chipper box, the actual vac box, a flatbed box, a flatbed for it, and then mechanical arms. So basically hydraulic system. So you can dump those bins and boxes off of there and change them out. What we wanted to talk to the board about now and just gauge your interest as the spec requires a right-hand drive on this. There's very few manufacturers that make the right-hand drive. Freightliner, International, and of course, excuse me, Mac has the Terra Pro. We've found, or it's being conveyed, that it's going to be more difficult to use the Mac product and the Terra Pro because of the emissions, how they sit back. If you notice where the vac attachment is on this, that would sit too far back for you to get a good angle for being in the Mac side. Freightliner, orders for Freightliner have been booked up, so basically unavailable on that side of it. That leaves us with the International. That was the first picture Renee showed of their, I think it's the HV line. That includes more of their heavy industrial line with the higher end Cummins motor in it. However, what we're finding is for us to order that unit, they're telling us there's a slot next year. They may be able to deliver it. However, unlike all of the other vendors, they want a $5,000 non-refundable, upfront purchase cost. So wanted to see if the board had any issues with us going and putting in a CoStar's order to get a slot for that, knowing it's coming next year. I always have concerns. If we don't successfully get the grant, I want to make sure that we can back out. And, as much as I want to be mindful of taxpayer dollars, I also want to be mindful if we don't get the grant for us to go expend $370,000. That's not going to be something we're going to be able to do next year. So do we take the gamble, hope we get the grant, or, we potentially may lose $5,000. And I just wanted to be, have that concern and put it out to the board to see what your thoughts are. We're hearing favorable things. Like I said, this is an eligible project. We won't know though until the fall or, early spring if we're going to get the award. However, us waiting will lose the slot for the cabin chassis. So that's our concerns. Wanted to get some feedback.
Quick question on the truck itself, other than leaf, doing the leaf pickup, can it be utilized for anything else?
That's why they kind of spec some of the other attachments. They're saying that it can, as they roll the leaf attachment off, if they put the flatbed on it, if they put that wood chipper like bin, you'll get kind of like a dumpster bin instead, like a roll off. Not much on. They looked at doing like dump truck body, that kind of component on it. Probably not
We
as
could stick a
useful.
plow on it though?
I don't think they prep the plow. I'd have to ask them if they could. and we could make sure that it's set up for that component.
Yeah, I only ask because obviously, leaf season isn't that long, so it's not gonna get abused, I wouldn't think anyway, and, and for that kind of money, might as well get some other use out of it,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
But I would,
It would have both, like the street sweeper. So we actually have there's two steering wheels in the street sweeper, the left and the right. And the purpose of that is so you can look out at the vac tube to see what you're grabbing up.
I would have preferred that it be a Mac, but understand otherwise. As far as the $5,000 to reserve the spot, I would be okay with that.
Okay. I appreciate that, and I'll keep everybody updated. What I'd like to do is, if they can get me the CoStar's number and everything, I'll just bring it back for a quick board approval at the next meeting. We'll get a slot ordered and we'll move forward. And what you'll also know, we included in the packet, just for reference, you'll see in there, part of these grants have matches. What we had done, and Stan and the grant writer actually had an appraiser come in and appraise the value of the land that where the compost center sits. That can actually be used as the match. So he included that value. I think it's like 200 and some $1,000 a year. That will satisfy the requirements. So there won't be cash out of pocket for the grant. It will be the in-kind space that we give to the compost center site. So just wanted the
Well
board to
done.
have that component. Then just another quick update. We've been working through the Upper Macungie, Lower Macungie LCA agreement for the transmission of the expected additional flows for the LCA Trexler Town bypass line. You may recall that line will run out of the pre-treatment plant across Grange Park down into the Upper Macungie line, which actually runs down Mill Creek through the Dan Weber portion where the metering station is, and then into the county authority line. We're an involved party because our flows from like Shepherd Hills, Mill Creek Road, part of Hamilton Boulevard actually go into that. We have an operating agreement with Upper Macungie from years past because LCA is going to be an involved player and put their transmission into there. It requires the three of us to reaffirm the agreement. The solicitor's office worked with myself and Bob Ibach from Upper. We have a draft copy that was just that we've agreed upon internally. We've just provided that to LCA for their feedback. We expect that to come back hopefully in the next maybe 2 weeks. We'll share a copy with the board. I think we'll be able to have it go to the workshop and then the August workshop for a September approval, but we'll see if we need to kind of bump that up quicker because that is holding the permitting for that project up with the state. So we might have to move it a little quicker. But I want to let you know that we were working on that. We also set a copy of the budget, the budget schedule. Wanted to make sure if the board could give us some feedback in the next couple of weeks, if you're okay with that. We wanted to be mindful because you will see in October that basically gives us like 4 or 5 meetings here. That is a lot for the month. We thought instead of having an October workshop, we could make that one of the budget meetings if we had to go to the additional third budget meeting. And then also let us do some workshop business after that if we needed to, but wanted to make sure everybody was okay on having that component out. We would be looking at a December 7th adoption of the budget. We would still have to have that first public reading on the 16th, even if we went to the second meeting in December, because we won't have enough time for the public inspection if we would read it on the 7th and then adopt it at the late December meeting. So either way, it has to be done by November 16th. So you could just give us some feedback on that. That would be appreciated. If you're okay, we'll pass that to our internal staff at some point. I don't need it tonight, but you can just give me some feedback.
Would anybody have a concern about eliminating the normal workshop for the month of October in place of a potential third budget meeting, which could also double as a workshop. I think then move forward in such a way.
Thank you. We'll take care of that. And that's all I have unless there's other questions for me or projects or concerns anybody may have.
Any other questions or comments for township manager? Okay, public comment on agenda topics. With that, I will announce that we will be having a brief executive session following this meeting to discuss potential litigation,
Land acquisition,
land acquisition, and
conditional use deliberation.
conditional use deliberation. With that, we're adjourned.